The courtroom was silent when my sister looked me dead in the eyes and said I had forged our mother's signature. I couldn't breathe. The lawyer slid a document across the table like it was proof. Like it was over. Everyone in that room believed her. Even my mother's oldest friend, sitting 3 rows back, slowly looked away from me. I had nothing. No evidence. No witness. No voice. My sister had spent 8 months building a lie so perfect that even I started questioning my own memory. And then the judge leaned forward, adjusted his glasses, and asked my sister one single question. She went completely pale. Why would that question terrify someone who was telling the truth? The morning my mother was buried, my sister hugged me at the graveside and whispered, "We'll get through this together." 3 weeks later, she filed a lawsuit against me. I wasn't supposed to find out the way I did. I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. A woman, calm, professional, told me I had been named as a defendant in a civil case regarding my mother's estate. I thought she had the wrong person. She didn't. My name. My mother's address. My supposed signature on a document I had never seen in my life. A revised will. Dated 6 weeks before my mother passed. In it, I was removed entirely. My sister, Dana, had apparently filed it with a probate attorney downtown. Everything was legal on the surface. Notarized. Witnessed. Clean. Too clean. I drove straight to Dana's house. She answered the door in her bathrobe, coffee in hand, like she'd been expecting a neighbor, not me. She didn't look guilty. That scared me more than anything. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said. Not, "I didn't do it." Not, "There's been a mistake." Just, "I didn't want you to find out like this." I pushed inside. She let me. That should have been my first warning. On her kitchen counter, beneath a grocery list and a set of keys, was a yellow envelope with the name of a law firm printed in the corner. The same firm handling the estate. I wasn't supposed to see it. But I did. I asked her point blank. "Did you forge Mom's signature?" She took a slow sip of her coffee. Set the mug down gently. "You should talk to my lawyer," she said. That night I went through every document my mother had ever given me. Every birthday card. Every handwritten note from the hospital. And I found something. A letter. Dated 8 months before my mother's death. My mother had written it by hand, shaky letters, clearly written when she was already sick. It was addressed to me. But it had never been mailed. "If something happens to me," it began, "and things don't seem right, check the blue folder. The one Dana doesn't know about." I had never heard of a blue folder. I didn't even know where to start looking. But now I understood one thing clearly. My mother had seen this coming. She had tried to warn me. And someone had made sure I never got the message. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at my mother's handwriting on that letter, tracing every shaky letter with my eyes like it might tell me something more. She had known. She had tried to protect me. And I had been completely blind. The next morning I called her oldest friend. Margaret. A woman who had known my mother for 40 years, who had held her hand through chemotherapy, through grief, through everything. She picked up on the second ring. The moment I mentioned Dana's name, the line went quiet. "I was wondering when you'd call," Margaret said. Not surprised. Not confused. Waiting. She told me to come over. She didn't want to talk on the phone. That alone told me everything I needed to know about how serious this was. Margaret lived 20 minutes away in a small house that always smelled like fresh coffee and old books. When I arrived, she was already sitting at her kitchen table. 2 cups poured. Like she had been ready for hours. She slid something across the table before I even sat down. A photograph. It was my mother. Dana. And a man I had never seen before, standing outside what looked like a law office. The date printed on the back of the photograph was 9 months ago. 3 months before my mother's condition got critical. Who is he? I asked. Margaret wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. That, she said slowly, is the man who notarized your mother's new will. My stomach dropped. Dana had been meeting with the notary, privately, months before my mother was even declared terminally ill. This wasn't opportunistic. This had been planned. I went home and called a lawyer. A real one. Mine. She told me what I was up against: a notarized document, 2 witnesses on record, and a sister with no prior legal trouble. On paper, my lawyer said carefully, she looks like the victim. Me. I looked like the one who had tried to manipulate a dying woman. My own mother. I spent the next 4 days pulling threads. Phone records. Bank statements. Anything my mother had left behind that Dana hadn't already gotten to first. And then I found it. A receipt. Tucked inside an old cookbook in my mother's kitchen, a kitchen Dana had already half cleared out. It was for a safety deposit box. Opened 14 months ago. In my mother's name only. I went to the bank the following morning with my mother's death certificate and my ID. The manager checked the records. Then checked again. There's a secondary access name on this account, she said carefully. I leaned forward. It wasn't Dana. It was me. My mother had put my name on that safety deposit box over a year ago. Before she got sick. Before any of this started. Like she had already decided, long before the end, that whatever was inside needed to reach me and only me. I opened the box right there in the bank. Inside was a single manila envelope. Inside that envelope was the original will. The real one. And a signed letter from my mother's original attorney confirming it had never been revoked. Dana's version, the revised will, had been built on top of a document that was never legally void. I thought that was it. I thought I had one. I called my lawyer immediately, hands shaking, voice cracking. She listened to everything. Then went very quiet. There's a problem, she said. Dana's attorney filed a motion this morning. They're claiming your mother lacked mental capacity when the original will was written. Dana wasn't just trying to steal the inheritance. She had anticipated that I might find the original will. And she had already prepared a way to destroy it. She wasn't reacting to me. She had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. Mental incapacity. That was her weapon. If Dana could convince the court that my mother wasn't mentally sound when she wrote the original will, it wouldn't matter that I had the document. It wouldn't matter that it was real. It would be worthless. I sat in my lawyer's office for 2 hours that afternoon. She laid out the reality slowly, carefully, like she was afraid the truth might break me. It almost did. Dana had obtained medical records from the early stages of my mother's illness. Reports that showed confusion, disorientation, memory lapses. On paper, taken out of context, my mother looked like a woman who hadn't known what she was signing. Can they do that? I asked. My lawyer looked at me steadily. They already did. I drove home in silence. No music. No phone calls. Just the sound of my own breathing and the growing feeling that no matter how much truth I uncovered, Dana had already built walls around every single piece of it. That night I couldn't eat. I sat at my kitchen table with the manila envelope in front of me and read my mother's original will for the 4th time. And I noticed something I had missed before. A line. Near the bottom. In smaller print. This document was prepared in the presence of and read aloud to the undersigned by Attorney Gerald H. Moore, who confirms the undersigned demonstrated full understanding and intent. Gerald H. Moore. I wrote the name down. My lawyer tracked him down within 24 hours. He was retired. Living quietly in a small town 4 hours away. She called him on a Tuesday morning. He called her back within the hour. Gerald Moore remembered my mother. He remembered that appointment specifically, because my mother had insisted on something unusual. She had asked him to record the session. Audio. A full recording of my mother, clear-voiced, sharp, deliberate, explaining exactly what she wanted and exactly why. Gerald Moore had kept a copy in his personal files for 14 years. We had our evidence. A recording that proved beyond any reasonable doubt that my mother was completely lucid when she signed that will. Dana's mental incapacity argument was about to collapse. I made the mistake of feeling relieved. The court date arrived. Dana walked in wearing black, like she was still mourning. Like she was still the grieving daughter. She didn't look at me once. Her lawyer presented first. Medical records. Doctor testimonies. A carefully constructed portrait of a confused elderly woman being taken advantage of by a greedy daughter. That daughter was supposed to be me. I watched the judge's face as they spoke. Neutral. Unreadable. I gripped the edge of the table and waited for my turn. My lawyer presented the recording. The courtroom shifted. I could feel it, a change in the air, in the posture of everyone sitting around us. My mother's voice filled the room. Strong. Clear. Certain. She named me. She explained her reasons. She spoke about Dana too, carefully, deliberately, in a way that made it clear she had thought about this for a long time. Dana's lawyer objected 3 times. The judge overruled him every single time. I thought it was over. I let myself breathe for the first time in weeks. And then Dana's lawyer stood up one final time and said 4 words that turned everything to ice. We have a witness. Second twist, the witness was Margaret. My mother's oldest friend. The woman who had handed me the photograph. The woman who had poured me coffee and looked at me with sad knowing eyes. She took the stand slowly. She didn't look at me. And she testified, quietly, carefully, devastatingly, that my mother had expressed regret about the original will in the final weeks of her life. That she had told Margaret she felt pressured. That she had felt afraid. Of me. The room tilted. My lawyer grabbed my arm under the table. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Margaret had been Dana's witness the entire time. The coffee. The photograph. The warning. It had all been staged to make me feel like I had an ally. So that when she betrayed me in court, I would have no time to prepare. Dana had sent her to me. And I had walked straight into it. I looked across the courtroom at my sister for the first time that day. She was looking back at me now. And for just a fraction of a second, so fast I almost missed it, she smiled. I had one night. One night before the judge reconvened to deliver a preliminary ruling on whether the original will would even be admissible. One night to find something, anything, that could explain why Margaret had done this. I didn't sleep. I went back through everything. Every conversation. Every detail. Every moment that had felt slightly wrong but that I had ignored because I was too consumed by grief to think clearly. And then I remembered something Margaret had said when I first arrived at her house. I was wondering when you'd call. Not surprised. Not confused. Waiting. I had taken that as concern. As loyalty. But she had known I was coming because Dana had told her I would. I pulled up my mother's phone records, the ones my lawyer had obtained through the discovery process. I searched for Margaret's number. They had spoken 47 times in the last 4 months of my mother's life. That wasn't unusual. They were best friends. But then I filtered the calls by duration. 39 of those calls were under 2 minutes. But 8 of them, all made in the final 6 weeks, lasted over an hour each. Long, private conversations. While my mother was bedridden. While Dana was supposedly the devoted daughter managing everything. I called my lawyer at midnight. She picked up. I told her what I had found and what I suspected. She was quiet for a long moment. I need you to trust me, she said finally. Don't do anything else tonight. Just come to court tomorrow. I didn't ask why. Something in her voice told me she already knew something I didn't. The next morning the courtroom felt different. Heavier. Stiller. Dana arrived with her lawyer and 2 associates. Organized. Confident. Margaret sat in the gallery 3 rows back, the same seat she had been in on the very first day. The judge called the session to order. Before Dana's lawyer could speak, my lawyer stood up. She requested permission to submit one additional piece of evidence. Dana's lawyer objected immediately. The judge studied the document my lawyer had placed before him. He overruled the objection without looking up. What my lawyer had obtained overnight, through an emergency records request, were financial documents. Specifically, transactions made from my mother's personal account in the final 3 months of her life. 14 transfers. Each one between $3,000 and $8,000. All of them going to the same account. Not Dana's account. Margaret's. The courtroom shifted so sharply I could feel it in my chest. Dana's lawyer was on his feet immediately, objecting, arguing, speaking over everyone. The judge raised one hand and silenced the entire room. Then he turned to Margaret in the gallery, adjusted his glasses, and asked her one single question. "Ma'am, did you receive money from the deceased's account while simultaneously agreeing to serve as a witness for the defendant?" Margaret went completely pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Dana. Dana looked away. In that silence, in that one devastating moment, everything collapsed. Margaret had been paid. Paid to befriend me. Paid to hand me that photograph and build my trust. Paid to take the stand and testify against me at the exact moment it would hurt the most. She hadn't been my mother's oldest friend acting out of grief. She had been Dana's instrument from the very beginning. But that wasn't the final revelation. My lawyer stood up one more time. She asked the judge for permission to play a short audio clip. It was a voicemail. Left on Margaret's phone. From Dana. Recorded 11 months ago, 4 months before my mother passed. Dana's voice filled the courtroom. Calm. Organized. Cold. She was outlining the plan, the will, the notary, the photograph, Margaret's testimony, every single piece of it. She had recorded herself giving instructions. A mistake so catastrophic it was almost impossible to believe. Except my lawyer explained it wasn't a mistake at all. My mother had recorded it. Somehow, in those final weeks, confused and bedridden as she was, my mother had figured out what Dana was planning. She had recorded that voicemail from Margaret's phone during one of those long private calls. And she had placed it, along with everything else, inside that safety deposit box. She had built the case herself. From her deathbed. For me. Dana was removed from the courtroom 40 minutes later. Her lawyer withdrew representation before noon. The revised will was declared fraudulent. I sat in that courtroom long after everyone had left. Just me and the echo of my mother's voice still somewhere in the walls. She had seen it all coming. She had fought for me the only way she still could. And she had trusted me to find it. I inherited everything my mother intended me to have. Dana faces criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and financial elder abuse. Margaret pleaded guilty in exchange for testimony. But I don't feel victorious. I feel hollowed out. Because somewhere underneath the fraud and the courtrooms and the forged signatures, Dana is still my sister. And I keep asking myself one question I cannot answer. What did my mother do, or fail to do, that turned one daughter into a protector and the other into a predator? And if you discovered that someone in your family had been slowly planning your destruction for years, would you fight to send them away? Or would you grieve the person you thought they were, and let the court decide?